you want to go ahead, we will kick over and start up our show.
Yes, right. Welcome. I'm Nerdy Gamers, or Kieran. Oh, God. I still left the audio on. This is a great start.
It's always that way.
Well, yes. So, yes, there's myself, Sanrael, and we are today going to be talking about adventure games. So,
yes. And not the adventure games where you dress up like an elf and go out into the woods and throw things around. Point-and-click adventure games.
Yeah, I did LARPing for a few years. I was even an elf at one point as well. So
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging anyone. I've never done it, but it sounds like a cool time.
And for the people watching, in the background, we have Beneath a Steel Sky. We've got about an hour's worth of footage of it. It's an old adventure game that I was playing through, so that's the game in the background. Okay, so adventure games. There was an awful lot of them. They were quite popular game until about, 1996 is when they started dying off, really?
Looking at it, really, they're still making some.
Yeah, I know, yes.
They're just not as popular, you're right. They're not as popular as what they used to be.
Yeah.
Because I remember back in the early 90s, late 80s, if you walked into a Babbage's, I don't know if anybody ever had a Babbage's in their mall, but it was basically one of your original PC stores where you can buy software. But when you walk into the Babbage's, man, you could not throw anything at the shelf where all the PC games were without hitting an adventure game. It was pretty much the genre of that time, was the point-and-click adventure game.
Yeah.
And I guess we should set up some definitions by what we're talking about when it comes to point-and-click adventure games.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about the old text adventure games. There's a whole different section there.
Yes.
So, and we're not talking about the modern adventure games as well. I mean, some people got down like Amnesia as an adventure game. So the classification of adventure game has kind of changed from how we remember it. For us, adventure games were
the genre broadened.
Yeah, we remember adventure games as being your point and clicks. And also the incredible, I say this with quotation marks, fun of doing the pixel search for the one square that you have to find, and also the logical traps they put into some of it where if you do something in slightly the wrong order, you're then never able to complete the game and it doesn't tell you.
Yes. You have to have saved often, so that way you can do it. Or even better yet, since a lot of the point-and-click adventure games was an inventory-based thing where you had to have this item in your inventory and this item in your inventory, and if you combine them, then you made this item, which helped you succeed.
Actually, kind of almost in a way, just saying that with the inventory thing, Dizzy. I think it was kind of an adventure game in that sense. It was more of an action thing, but you had the full inventory system, but you had to bounce around screens, and you completed some of the puzzles in there. It wasn't quite the point-and-click adventure games, which we're specifically talking about. But this is one of the reasons why I was narrowing it down to point-and-click adventure games, because that definition does broaden out somewhat.
Well, I know that when we come to talking about point-and-click adventure games, it's specifically you move to a screen and there are certain things that you can interact with on the screen by pointing at them and clicking them with your mouse. It's that stupidly easy to define.
Yes.
And I know that some of the largest companies of that time, and it was Sun Griffin was mentioning that it was kind of interesting because you remember one company, I remember another one as being the larger, LucasArts, or Lucas Entertainment, Lucasfilm Games, whatever you want to call them at that time.
Lucasfilm Games, later on LucasArts.
And I remember Sierra Entertainment, which is Sierra Online, as being the larger one.
I think, I don't know if it was sort of like a England and America thing, but I mean over here the LucasArts stuff was, I don't know, a bit more prominent. I mean, I do remember stuff about King's Quest and Space Quest, but they didn't seem to get half as much of attention, at least the areas where I looked, as, say, Indiana Jones and also Monkey Island. Those
Right.
kind of seem to dominate more over here. Maybe it was just me, maybe it's just where I was looking and where I was getting my information from. But this is the thing, this is where I remember what I remember. I mean, actually, even one of the first ones I remember, Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders, that's a LucasArts film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Manic Mansion, Lucas
Yes.
Games.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know that it's necessarily which side of the Atlantic, because like I said, Sun Griffin, who's from California and grew up at the same time that I did, but she remembers LucasArts. Of course, her favorite being Monkey Island, my favorite being the Space Quest series. But yeah, I think that it was just exposure. I honestly do. For me, Lucasfilm Games was X-Wing and TIE Fighter.
Well, yes, and X-Wing versus TIE Fighter used to play that on a mouse, but then you got the Jedi Knight series, and this is obviously its own different. Actually, to be honest, we're probably just going to have to do a LucasArts section just by itself. They've got such a broad range of games. We can just talk about their games just for an entire hour without any reference to anything else.
Well, technically, we could actually break this down into two 1-hour segments, one being Sierra and one being Lucas.
No, three. One being Sierra, one being Lucas, one being everything else.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, we'll try not to do that since it's... Did you just die?
Yes.
I think you just died.
Yes, I did. I did just die. This is. I had done some pre-testing, so I did a little death sequence just to show that dying.
And you just let it sit there, which I think's hilarious.
I think
You're just like, I'm dead.
I was texting somebody at the time, which I think I don't. This is you'll see me actually pause at various times because I am texting someone at the same time whilst I'm doing this.
Well, since we're on point-and-click adventure games, I guess we'll talk about the game that's going on in the background, which is Beneath a Steel Sky.
Yes.
And it is, of course, a point-and-click adventure game.
Yeah, it's got some hilarious dialogue in this game. You get a companion called Joey, and he is a sarcastic robot, and oh my god, he just takes the piss out of most things. He's a bit antagonistic, and you just get some great characterization back and forth. I mean, this is the thing. For character stories, adventure games did have an awful lot to them, because it was all based around the story. You got the strong narrative all the way throughout, whereas you get FPS games, they try and put in stuff like that. It just doesn't kind of have the same feel. RPGs are probably the closest to it, but they tend to be a bit more freeform, and some of them go between a strong structured story, and others take it more freeform, so they don't really take into account what you do. But yeah, the adventure games, they gave your character had his own personality, and you played the character. You did not try and impose yourself onto that character. So this guy has all of his dialogue, he has his reactions. You just kind of tell him, go over there and do that.
Yeah, exactly. His world is already predefined by the programmers. Now it's just a matter of you pointing him in the right direction so that his world actually works. I will say that is a characteristic that, for the most part, not all of them, because there are some that we'll get into, but for the most part, they were all very...
Sorry, I'm just looking at the video, like an asthmatic dinosaur in mating season. There's some brilliant bits of dialogue in this. Sorry, carry on.
No, that's what I was going to say, was that it seems to me that all of them had that brilliant dialogue, as you said.
Yeah.
They all had that just amazing, just moments that would make you laugh. Some of the death scenes, you ended up killing yourself just so you could watch and see how many different ways your character could get evaporated, blown out of an airlock.
I mean, that was actually kind of the big thing for Sierra. I mean, Sierra did the save often, save frequently, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, and so for them, they were very big on the death scenes. Lucas, for instance, was less on the death scenes. You had a few, but it was more how you escaped and stuff like that.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I mean, some of them. I mean, the first one I really remember of the LucasArts games was Zach McCracken, I think. Was that Zach McCracken or? I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. I don't really remember it too well, but I remember seeing bits and pieces all over the place in various magazines that I was reading. Here's solutions of how to complete it, and there were some very, very odd bits to the game. I mean, you just look at these. The artwork for it, and you got Zach McCracken standing on a great big pile of stuff, and he's holding a loaf of bread, carrying a goldfish in a bowl. Kind of sums up some of the logic of that game. And
well, that's kind of the logic of a lot of those, is that click on everything.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be used at some point in time.
Yeah, well, also you have the whole click on everything, but don't forget you've got to do some really weird combinations, like use this item with use this item. And there's like one of them, Sam and Max. You could get one of those extendable hand things, and then you've got to use like piranha fish on it to create a gripper, or then you had to put a magnet on top of it so you could get other bits and pieces. Sometimes you really had to think in very obtuse or cute ways to understand what on earth the developers were thinking on. And even when you figure it out, it's a case of, what the hell were you on when you thought about this? Because that really doesn't make a lot of sense, even if I do follow your train of logic.
Sometimes, yeah, exactly. And sometimes you're right. Sometimes you had to go and either find somebody who knew what the hell was going on. At that time, you didn't have the internet, but you had a BBC.
Oh, God. I didn't actually get online until about 1996. About 96, 98. So, of course, I was back in the day when trying to complete these games, you had to go through the gaming magazines, and oh my God, one of the TV shows, The Game Master, over in England, we had, and it was like one of the few ways that we could actually get information about how to complete games, because there was just nowhere else. But a TV show was actually a viable way of disseminating game information.
And that was just it, though. But that was part of the fun and the challenge, was having to figure out, okay, I've picked up this bit of string, a broom handle, 2 batteries that are empty. Let's see, I've got the mop head, which has come loose from the mop handle. I got a roll of duct tape.
Mm-hmm.
I combine all these things to make a spaceship. What? Okay. But yeah, I mean, it was the fun in seeing all the different texts that you could get from the people, how things interacted, the death scenes, of course, for Sierra. Just absolutely fabulous. But like you said, we can talk for hours about the genre, but let's dig into some of the ones that we remember.
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the first ones I clearly remember, there were others before, it was actually the Gabriel Knight series, which actually, funnily enough, is Sierra Online.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of one of the few ones there. The first one was Gabriel Knight's Sins of the Fathers. It's kind of, I don't know, it's like kind of a semi-horror, very dark storyline. Where it was very well, I think it was quite well written, very strong storyline, and you kind of finding out your family history as you go along, and it just seems to get weirder and weirder and weirder as you go along, as you start uncovering all this kind of stuff.
You're right, and that was one of the Sierra games that was actually kind of in opposition of their normal point-and-click adventure games, where most of theirs were fun, lighthearted, fun. We're just here to have a good time. This one was actually more dark, like you said. It was a horror film.
Yeah, and actually, it's just reading a bit of things. I don't remember the entire game, but it says the game offers two endings which differ based on the results of Gabriel's actions. So even back then, it was kind of a good first one, which actually had multiple endings to a game. This was made back in 1993.
What goes on in here? It's me workshop.
And see, I'm going to go back a little bit further. Of course, I've got just a few years on you. But before that, another one that came out from Sierra Online, Sierra, that again was not as far as I remember, not the light-hearted tongue-in-cheek, but was more serious, was the Police Quest series.
What are you making?
I don't really remember that. I know of them, but I never really... I kind of read bits about them, and it was like, read around it rather than actually play it.
It was a rule of thumb at the time that if a point-and-click adventure game had the word quest in it, whether it began or ended with it, it was a Sierra game. So, because we had Space Quest, King's Quest, Police Quest, then you had Quest for Glory, and all of those were Sierra. And they were all a lot of fun. The one that I played the most, of course, was the Space Quest, and then followed by the King's Quest. Again, a great series of games spanning several sequels, several sequels, so popular that for Windows 95 they were re-released as VGA that were compatible with Windows 95 and 98.
Well, if I actually remember, that was actually done by some fans of the game, and they spent their time redoing a lot of it, and then they turned around and said, we love your work, we kind of want to make it official. This is what I remember. I might be wrong here.
That sounds about right. That does sound about right. But yeah, that was the series for me that defined it. Was that the King's Quest and the Space Quest series. So much so that the King's Quest and Space Quest series were both... I know Space Quest, the original one, which the first one came out in the late 80s. So we're talking about 1986. Not even the late 80s, kind of the mid 80s. So it got a graphic overhaul in the 90s for it that made it a lot more up to date. It looked more like Beneath the Steel Sky, which is what we've got going on in the back here. It looked a lot more like that one.
Beneath the Steel Sky is kind of classic period for example of an adventure game of this period. I mean, this is the Scum system. It has that kind of animated dialogue, single screens, and you kind of, when you click, you walk the entire length, so you'll go upstairs, you'll see everything. And so, yes, you literally walk around the screen. It's actually saying this, and then they were talking about it. I actually dimly remember playing Manic Mansion, which was 1987. There's not a lot of many games before that, and that's mostly the King's Quest series, and I think Space Quest has just started up, and Leisure Suit Larry, well, all other Sierra games, really.
Yes, and I was going to talk about that one.
Yeah, this Manic Mansion wasn't the first Lucas games. It was I think it was like the second one, and the stuff that they got going in there, you can see where people drew the inspiration for Day of the Tentacle with.
Yeah. Another great one, Day of the Tentacle.
I don't want to talk about it.
That's the one thing that
a new shell, I promise.
Again, Sierra great for bringing the very comedic to things. The first of the King's Quest games came out in 1984, and then the next one came out in 85. Then we had then King's Quest 3 in 86. Space Quest in 86, the Black Cauldron in 86, all from Sierra.
So, Black Cauldron, is that from the Disney animation? Oh, it is. Oh my God, I loved that story. Oh.
One of the ones that never really got a lot of fanfare.
I loved it. It was.
I know it was a great one, but
Yeah, it was the little pig, and it was the girl was actually changed into a little pig, or somebody was changed into a little pig, and the pig became
so long.
yeah, the pig was incredibly important to the entire story, and it's just a brilliant movie. I loved watching that over and over and over again.
Again, that's another great one though. That we can go on about Disney cartoons again. I don't know that I want to do a show about that one.
No, I am not.
But
well, it depends. We've got loads of discussion topics. I'm sure at some point we'll probably talk about it.
I'm sure it'll come up often with us. How's that?
Yeah.
But back to these. Then in 1987, Sierra goes to produce this point-and-click adventure game, but very racy at the time. I mean, a very racy game. Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards.
Yes, Leisure Suit Larry.
Yes, leisure.
Or leisure.
Leisure. Whatever. Depends on which side of the ocean you're on, I guess.
The right
thing
side.
About the right side. I'm going to let that one go for now. But you'll get your comeuppance. Yes, you will.
No. You see, I'm actually on the right-hand side of you. Therefore, I'm on the right side. Argue your way around that one.
Yeah. Yeah, you keep it up, guy. Leisure Suit Larry and the Leisure Suit Larry in the Land of the Lounge Lizards. That's a title for you. Where you played a character who literally was just point-and-click adventure trying to score.
Yes.
A series that was so popular that even today it is not abandonware and can only be purchased. A series that is so popular that had a recent one made in the 2000s.
Well, there's Leisure Suit Larry was re-released in 1997 of the 1991 remake of the 1987 game, and it's been had an HD remake just this year as well.
So, as we can see, a very popular series, but don't let your parents catch you playing it, because that's the whole thing about it. But I'm going to tell you right now, one of the first adventure point-and-click games that I played, Leisure Suit Larry 3. Oh my gosh, I gotta find it now because the title on it was just awesome. Let me come over here because I know
we've got Leisure Suit Larry goes looking for love in several of the wrong places, and Leisure Suit Larry 3, passionate Patty in the pursuit of pulsating pectorals.
That's it. Passionate Patty in pursuit of the pulsating pectorals. Okay. Graphic standards, they were, at the time, the best graphics you could find. To say that you could get anything out of this was so ridiculous. But the innuendo was there, and the writing on it was just absolutely ridiculous and awesome. The game was just so funny, very tongue-in-cheek. And like I said, it was pulp garbage, really, is what it was. But it is apparently beloved pulp garbage, because why else would it be there? By the way, just wanted to give you a little heads up here. I looked through the list. Space Quest: Valhalla Strikes Back is a free, non-commercial, fan-made game put out in 2011, and Space Quest Incinerations was another free, non-commercial, fan-made game. I might have to go pick those up when I'm back, because I've downloaded so many other games that I have yet to really play through. Speaking of, another one that I kind of broke my teeth on playing games, or cut my teeth on, rather. One that you said you'd never played, and it's called The Adventures of Willie Beamish.
Yeah, I have never even heard of that up until today, so...
The Adventures of Willie Beamish, again, a Sierra game, using this same system that we see here. The graphics on it were superb, and it was a cartoon kind of feeling to it, where you played a young boy named Willie Beamish.
Really?
Dad,
That's shocking, that.
I know. But wait, it gets better.
But wait,
he goes on
more.
an adventure.
Oh my god, I did not see this coming. I mean, oh my god, my mind is blown here.
That mind equals blown, right?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Right.
I know.
Oh, it's amazing. Crazy. Oh dear.
I think this is what M. Night Shyamalan first got started on. Ooh, a little too much? Alright. The whole idea was that the town that you...
Oh, whoa. You already just went for a second there.
Okay, are we back?
Try that again, yes. Try that again.
Are we good? Okay.
Yes, we're good.
The whole premise of the game was that Willie Beamish lives in this little town, and they use this sweetener called Toot Sweet, which, come to find out, is made from
good thing I'm naturally photogenic.
reconstituted human. Anyway, your dad. What's that?
Me you could fly.
Yes, Soylent Green. Anyways, your dad loses his job and gets hired to be the spokesperson and fall guy for this company. Anyways, you go on an adventure to kind of prove that your dad's innocent in what they're doing, and it's very, very funny. You can tell it's the age of the Nintendo because he plays a video game and he's getting ready for the video game championships that are coming up.
They seem to think you're someone special.
And again, it's just very...
Forget it.
It has the famous quote-unquote death scenes, but instead of Willie dying, he just gets in trouble or gets caught or whatever. But you know the game is great when you first start off trying to break out of class and you write the words hall pass on a piece of wood with a crayon.
Oh my god, that reminds me of Back to School almost.
Can you open that door?
My god.
I'll give it a try.
And yeah, oh sorry, it's just a brain going off on some random old games.
I want to say that we all remember. Well, we remember
Your officer right,
the text-based games.
Yeah.
Famous, of course, most famous one out there is Zork, and
Yes.
all of its iterations.
The thing is, I've never actually played that game. I know it. I know of it. I've seen brilliant references to it. Actually, there's one of the. If you're a geek, there is one book which I could just not recommend more. Actually, it's called Ready Player One. If you kind of our age and you've played a lot of games, there's just so many references to the 80s and early 90s movies, games, old adventure games. It's just a brilliant book. It just reminded me of so much. Anyway, yeah, sorry, totally, yes,
That's
Zork.
okay.
Yeah, and I never really played that. So my kind of first text adventure for me was The Hobbit and also Valhalla. Those were kind of my first adventure games, and also what Level 9 did. There was Time and Magic. I think they also have a few other games as well. I can't remember if they were Worm in Paradise or not. Yes, they did Worm in Paradise, Snowball, Return to Eden. The Worm in Paradise was actually kind of one of my favourite text adventure games, which I played over and over and over again. Never, ever completed it.
And we go, you see a door. Would you like to go through the door? Yes. I'm sorry, I don't understand that command.
Actually,
go through the door.
The inputs for Worm in Paradise in that series were really quite good, but was it like Snowfall? Or was it no? It was Return to Eden. It was one where you started off in a spaceship and you actually had like 5 minutes to get yourself out of a room, because if you didn't do that, you died. So you actually had various sections of the game which were actually timed as well. So that was quite interesting. You didn't find out sometimes until afterwards that they were timed, and if you failed to do it, you just ran out and died.
Just kind of finding a resolution through absolution of oneself. You just sacrifice. I know that that's, as our need for the visual progressed, we started getting text-based adventure games combined with a graphical interface that you could do things.
I mean, it started off as just the pure text, and then what they would do, it's like The Hobbit, I think, was one of the first ones, and you start getting the single picture that would literally you would watch it on the screen draw itself, because they couldn't just present the picture because it was basically a series of commands, and it was so slow that you would see these the drawings just draw themselves on the screen, and then eventually they start combining. Mice start to appear, so they start allowing you to do some very basic clicking on things, and then they go, well, actually we can make a whole game based off this. So they start dropping the text components and start moving into the full click on screen. The graphics were still incredibly basic. We're still probably talking like CGA era.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But then it starts going a little bit further and a little bit further until you start getting some of the really amazing adventure games. And some of them are really beautiful. Oh, actually,
I would say, go ahead.
I was going to say, it was just about beautiful adventure games. I'll come back to that one in a moment.
Well, that's what I was going to go on, was that we have to remember that at this point in time, they put a lot into graphics as to what they could do, but you didn't have to make everything match up with the DirectX number and all these different video cards and their settings and how much memory, because everything was built on board. There wasn't a graphics card. So we look at this game, and to me, this still looks great. It still holds to the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, the quality is really very good. It just kind of goes to show you the level of the artwork which they actually put into these games. And
you had to be an artist, yes.
Yeah, and in a way, they're beautiful. I mean, yes, today we'd be able to do the same thing with maybe slightly higher fidelity in the graphics, but because it was a very stylized 2D artwork, it holds. And this is one of the things where you actually when you start getting into the 3D artwork, that's where you start having some issues. This is where, if we come over to the next game, Myst. Now, when this game came out, it was one of the first games that actually worked with 3D graphics, and it was amazing stuff. I mean, they literally, I think they would render this stuff for ages. It all got presented as 2D graphics, as a series of 2D graphics, but what they did is they pre-rendered out these entire scenes and then basically stored them as image sheets, which they would display to you. You didn't walk around a 3D environment, you just moved from screen to screen. But at the time, it was mind-blowing, these graphics. It kind of showed you what the power of the 3D environment could do.
Yeah.
And they were way above pretty much anything else at the time. I mean, when people talked about, and you want beautiful graphics, they kept referring to Myst for so long. I mean, it's only in the past 5 years, 10 years, they kind of stopped referring every single time to Myst. Now I think now people generally use say Crisis as a benchmark, as well, not only for the graphics but also does it melt your computer.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to refer you to a game that can only be run on the highest level of graphics on a designer computer.
Yeah, I mean, Myst got around that because they did all the pre-processing ahead of time, so it was like masses and masses of time went into that. But yeah, when you start actually displaying it, it was just such great work. I mean, these days, when you start looking at the graphics, because it was based off the 3D graphics, it does suffer. I mean, at the time, it was so good. And this is where some of the 2D artwork, I think, actually works a lot better over 3D artwork, because 2D artwork can stand the test of time, which 3D artwork just can't do.
Which we're seeing right here.
Yeah.
The background and everything that you see here is 2D, with the exception of the character who moves in almost a three-dimensional, because you can see he's got all three sides to him. As you happen to do a little twirl there right as I mentioned that.
Yeah, I mean, Beneath the Steel Sky is 1994.
Exactly. Willie Beamish is the same way. You've got in the foyer, you walk into the foyer of the home, and you can go up the staircase, into another room, into the kitchen behind you, and it takes precedent and realizes that all of these spaces exist, but it's a flat 2D surface, so you're not moving forward, you're moving up on the page, or up to the right, or to the right, but it still looks fantastic, and because it does work with perception, point of view, you know, when your character moves away, you get smaller. As you get closer, you get larger.
Here we go. Right, as an example of FPS games that came out in 1994, you've got System Shock, Doom 2, Alien Breed was 1995. But, I mean, you got two of those games, System Shock and Doom 2, kind of benchmarks for FPS games at the time. And they kind of look more dated than this game does. Doom was actually 1993. So you think...
Space Hulk.
Yeah.
Again.
So, when you think about some of the FPS games with the 3D environments, when you compare it to the 2D artwork for the adventure games, I do think, as a whole, adventure games do stack up, and they stand the test of time a lot better than games of the same era.
And it's something that we've talked about already, and that is the dialogue. The dialogue comes because the game realizes that you'll only continue to play if I'm going to give you a story that makes you want to play. I'm not going to say that all of the games of today are missing that, but let's face it, when you're trying to focus on making the game look really good, and you've got another department that's writing this really great story, I think that sometimes things get lost in translation, and that you end up with a great looking game, but the story just doesn't thrill you as much as it should. Or you get a slightly less looking great game, but the story is fantastic. And honestly, for me, replayability comes from how entertaining the storyline is, the dialogue, if I'm drawn to the characters and things like that. One of the things that you know I do is I play Battlefield 3. I love Battlefield 3. I'm not much... It's funny because I don't generally like player versus player kind of thing, but for some reason I love this game. Just drop money on it for all of the future upgrades for it. And I don't regret it because I think it's a fantastic game as a multiplayer game. I'm going to tell you, I ran through the single-player game in 2 hours.
I think I've heard people saying it was 4 hours. It's not particularly very long.
It's not long. You don't feel any attraction to the characters. You don't feel for their plight. You can like the characters, but it's not watching. It's not like you're playing a full-length movie where at the end you're hoping there's a resolution. It's more like you're kind of watching a pilot episode that you're kind of like, I'll see if there's a spinoff. And that's really what it is. But then again, I think that EA knows their customer and their niche for that game is the multiplayer aspect. It's what really sold it for Battlefield 2 Bad Company, Battlefield Bad Company 2, and everything. And just for me, I think that's kind of what they're going for now is let's throw it out there and make it as multiplayer as possible. And if it doesn't work, we'll have to look at our Medal of Honor series, or we can do it again with the next one.
So I kind of liked the early Medal of Honor series. I kind of got into those.
Right.
Then as they went on, I don't know, I just kind of lost interest in them.
Well, what's so funny, though, and I'm going to go back to this, even though I just mentioned how entertaining the story is, the original Battlefield 1942, which came out for the PC and other consoles, literally had no story. It was just a series of military campaigns that you ran through. And that's it.
But, I mean, when you look at like Call of Duty and Battlefield, most of them are basically designed around the multiplayer. There's some single player, but I like local multiplayer but I tend to play a lot of my games single player, so it's a case of, well, I don't really care about your online multiplayer.
Well, that's the thing, though, is that even though these games were not multiplayer, you and your friends who played them, you got together and you talked about it, and you were like, I'm stuck here. Oh, this is how you get past it, but I'm stuck over here. Oh, okay, that's how you get past this part. And you shared what you knew, and you shared your knowledge.
You actually needed notebooks as well.
Yes.
Yeah, keep a notebook and you keep all the information there. And then, of course, you've got to try and remember, now, did I use this with this, and this with this, and this with this? And,
It's kind of like we were talking about the first-person dungeon hack, dungeon crawls, like Might and Magic 3 and all those others where you actually had like a ream of graph paper, only in this case.
Oh, God, yeah.
You had a ream of paper that you could take notes. Okay, this guy is this. Especially as you collected things. Like, I see a lot of stuff here that's in capital letters, and I know my brain automatically goes, that's a keyword. And I start writing down all the keywords. I would end up with this random string of keywords. And my dad picked up my notebook one time, and he's reading through these keywords. And he's like, what is this? Like, it's for a game. Uh-huh. And then he just handed it back to me and walked off. Better not be that game about that guy trying to have sex. No.
Actually, was it Wizardry 8 kind of did a combination between being a 3D game, but also having the text parts, and they would give you the keywords. And so you'd partway through, you'd actually have to remember all those capital letters and words and type them in the conversation, or you would actually have it come up as little bits in your text box, and you could click on them and use them as conversation pieces.
And that's like the, again, going back to the whole text to point and click, spellcasting series, the Spellcasting 101, 102, 103, so forth and so on, where you played a bumbling wizard / nerd, and you had to basically go through, and you started college, and then in another one you were on spring break. It was a text-based game, but it had that picture where you actually clicked on something to interact with it in the picture, multiple things to interact with them in the picture, or you could type out what you wanted to do, and it would actually change the picture as you did things. The Zork series evolved into that same thing, into where the last one, Return to Zork, which was the last Zork game that I know of, was a point-and-click adventure game that happened to panel at a time, as opposed to where we see here, where you're moving about. So there was no more text, but it was, you would move right, it would shift until you see a single panel, and you would have to click on things within that panel to do your adventure. It was actually really interesting to see.
I mean,
I don't know.
One thing we haven't really actually talked about, Space Quest. We've kind of brushed on it, but we've talked about the multiple death scenes. But that was kind of one of the big things, the whole big thing about Sierra, which was the death scenes.
Of course.
And it's how they kind of set you up for it. And so, for instance, you could be sitting in an airlock, and you get the controls, and it will tell you, this opens up the airlock. And you go and press it, and it gives you no warning, nothing. And you would press it, and you would just get sucked out into space. And that's it. And it would mock you. The game would actually mock you for being stupid enough to do that. And they did it for every single death. They just like mocked you. Why were you so stupid?
Ha ha, stupid clicky person.
Yes.
Why are you so stupid? And you're like, because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to put the fork in the plug.
Yeah, it was some of the games, like the first one, you also had, you had to be careful, and there were some timed events. So, I think actually, wasn't it like Space Quest, you actually had something like only a few hours to actually complete the game in or something? Because I think the whole game was actually timed, or a good section of it.
There's a portion of it that is, but I don't remember which one one in particular it is. But there's a portion of one of them where you have to get out of there within a certain period of time. But they give you enough time to do it, but eventually, they give you enough time to do it, but that is if you kind of know what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you have no clue and you're clicking around, you could probably do it, but it would be very, very nice reference there, Doctor Who. I would say, so, okay, are we going to call the genre dead, or has it evolved?
I mean, adventure games is still going on. I mean, for instance, the company I work for, our big game series are adventure games. We sell them. It's how we make our money. We do some other bits and pieces, but we got basically 11 people hired off the back of point-and-click adventure games and a couple other puzzle games. Flash is, you can actually develop. There's a fair few number of adventure games on there. We're seeing remakes of adventure games coming out. You go look on Kickstarter and you see some of the things. They're putting up money. We want to make a new adventure game, point-and-click adventure game, and then suddenly they're being given vast sums of money. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Group they were asking for $800,000 to make a new point-and-click adventure game. One day, I think it was something like they made $3.4 million, and this was just off one day.
Wow!
There is a market for adventure games, and there is a lot of money out there. People want adventure games. And we're not talking about the 3D environment. We're talking about point-and-click adventure games, old school stuff. I mean, when the Steam sale came up, I managed to. My mum, who used to play all the old text adventures, she bought the Broken Sword trilogy.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Another great series.
Yes, which we haven't even brushed upon. But yeah, so I mean, there are people who want these games, and I don't think they're dead. I just think they've evolved, they've changed, and we're finding new audiences for adventure games, and it's a shame they kind of drop off and went somewhere, because unfortunately during that time we got the whole period of everybody chasing the best graphics. It was all about, oh, look at this latest graphics card, oh, look at this great 3D environment, oh, look at this. But you know what? Where were the great stories? Where were the interesting puzzles? And now kind of graphical fidelity has reached a point where you're not getting that much an improvement from year on year, not like it used to. People are going back and looking at some of these things and going, well, you know what? We've learned a lot about artwork and how we can do things. Let's take this back to some of these games and start creating adventure games. I mean, we've seen some recent ones, like Machinarium. It's quite an interesting little puzzle stroke adventure game. You just click on the areas and you've got to solve various things, and it's really rich graphical environment. And again, it's going to be one of those games that's going to stand the test of time because it's got such a strong graphical sense to it. There was one, Neverhood, which I think was 2005, which is all basically done with clay. That can't age.
I know it.
Yeah, yes. It's basically claymation, and and there's just loads of great little games that have come out over the years, and it's always been there. Adventure games haven't died; they've just not been as prominent.
Exactly. I think they've given way to the flash and the shiny, much as many things have done, and it's which is okay. You know, it's kind of like how we were talking about the '90s and the '80s cartoons. They'll always be there. They may not, our memories may be better than what they are, but I think with these, it's these are just as good as we remember them to be.
I mean, for me, I know when I kind of stopped playing adventure games as such, and unfortunately it was Broken Sword 3. I mean, don't get me wrong, that was an amazing game. I loved the story, I loved everything about it.
Right.
But I just spent 40 quid to get this game. And this was because it came out brand new. This was going to be like my one purchase for the year, and cause I was dirt poor at the time, and bought it, played it, and I completed it in like 4 or 5 hours.
And you were like, okay.
And the only reason why it took that long is because I got stuck on one of the puzzles at the end for an hour. It may have been 8 hours. It really did. It just lasted like a day. Because at the time you could still take games back to the stores. This was just before they started introducing a policy of no, you can't do that anymore. So I did get my money back. But after that, it was a long time since before I played another adventure game. And
that's the last one that I truly played and bought. Was one of the last ones I remember for a point-and-click adventure game. It was from Lucasfilm Games, and it was called Full Throttle.
What are you talking
You were a motorcycle. You weren't part of a gang, but you were part of a gang. But the whole, kind of a lone wolf bike rider. But it was fantastic. They did a really great job of it. There was actually little fight scenes you could do, and it was you and another motorcycle guy. He would ride up beside you, and you had to knock him off with a weapon or something like that. It was a fantastic game. Still, again, stands the test of time. It's a genre that I would love to see make a comeback, especially with what we can do nowadays. Do I think it's going to happen? Not to what we saw in the 90s. But then again, like I said, maybe that's perfect. Maybe that's what it is that we don't need it to come back like that to what it was. Not because it's going to take away from anything that's out there currently, but because I would hate to see a dim light shined on what I feel was probably one of the best series, one of the best types of games that you can have. Like I said, we've listed a huge of them, all of the King's Quest, all the Space Quest, all of the Lucasfilm games, like you were saying, Myst, which redefined the genre, but yet still stayed true to what it was. It was a fantastic story that had almost zero dialogue.
Yeah. It was basically all about the graphics, but they put so much into that, it's not surprising.
Well, I mean, you look at it, it spinned off Riven, and...
there was one more after it.
Yeah, Sun Griffin, who was a huge fan of the game series. 5 games altogether. And at one time was slated for an MMO-type game. She just informed me they actually had one. Was that Uru? Uru, but they actually had to close it down.
What a waste of energy.
Spun off its own book series and everything. And I'm surprised that, I'm surprised that it never spun off a movie. But then again, I don't know how you would do that. But
try pressing the button on the right.
Wow, 6 games all said and done. That's crazy. But again, that just goes to show you the power of having something that was intensely fun, challenged your brain, and stuff like that. Now, I was told that I have to talk about a particular game because it is Sun Griffin's favorite one, and I've watched her play it, and I've actually seen a lot of the things, and that's called The Dig.
I am moderately aware of that game. I've seen some of it, but not all of it. It's kind of one of those ones which it was very, very big, and it was a LucasArts game as well.
This is a big budget game.
Yeah.
It's LucasArts, Lucasfilm Games. Robert Patrick was the voice of Commander Boston Lowe, the protagonist. Robert Patrick being the T-2000, have you seen this boy? Stephen Bloom, David Lodge, Liliana Jones. Like I said, big production. The music score on it was huge.
Yeah, the writers, Steven Spielberg, Brian Moriarty. Moriarty, wow, actually somebody called Moriarty. And Orson Scott Card.
Right. Steven Spielberg. Hello, heavy hitter with sci-fi today. Orson Scott Card, do I even need to say anything more about that one? Brian Moriarty, which his name rings so familiar with me because I always take notice of anybody named Moriarty. Oh my gosh, he wrote Beyond Zork, Wishbringer, Trinity. He was involved in the Young Indiana Jones video game. And Loom. Do you remember Loom?
Oh god, yes, I remember Loom. That was one I actually finished.
He was actually involved in that. He was one of the main...
Great story. I love the way they combined music with the whole point-and-click adventure game and used it. So anyway, sorry. Let's move off there. We were talking about the dig.
This basically, there was an asteroid moving within Earth's, was going to hit Earth, and they put a group of specialists on the asteroid to put explosives on it, blow it off, and either blow it up or move its trajectory.
Well,
and
this sounds like two certain films that I know of.
Doesn't it, though?
Yes.
And they come to find out that this thing is actually linked to alien technology, and it's a spaceship. And, again, uses the same scum system, uses the same very high-end art for the background and graphics for the characters. Great puzzles. I mean, again, watching this played, it's just a fantastic game. That's available on Steam. It comes highly recommended by Sun Griffin. She says it's probably it's her Space Quest. So for me, Space Quest is like, if you can play any Space Quest game, play it. For her, she's saying if you can play any point adventure game, The Dig. Even more so than Monkey Island, which...
Oh, yeah, I mean, we haven't even touched Monkey Island. That's...
That whole series, you mean?
Yeah. Just the first one alone. I mean, one of the best things I loved about that game was the fight scenes. And you imagine a game where the fight scenes is entirely determined by conversation. So
yes.
You had to learn. Your opponent would give you a witty one-liner. In order to counter their blow, you had to know of the witty response back to it. So you would go around all these different pirates and learn their lines and what the responses were, and eventually you get to craft your own. And that's how you win one of the big boss fights, which stops you from getting on to the next part of the story. By literally, and you're going back and forth trading these lines, and then finally you deliver that line, and they've got no response for it, and so you win the fight. But your entire battle, your entire action in a point-and-click adventure game is just based off the dialogue. And that was a brilliant move. And there's also got...
That's the best combat system I've ever heard of.
Yeah, but also they've got the whole thing with Guybrush Threepwood. His one special thing that he could do was he could hold his breath for 10 minutes. And it becomes very, very important, the scene with the bridge. And we remember when we hit this bit that you get basically get a concrete block chained to you, and you get thrown off the edge, and you're underwater, and you basically got 10 minutes in order to figure out how to get out. And there's loads of things all around you, and it's like sword, and it's literally labelled sword, conveniently just out of reach. And there's like shears, there's everything conceivable to help you escape, and you could try and grab them all. There's nothing that you can reach to actually get yourself out. The big secret was to that. You just had to think slightly sideways in how you normally play a point-and-click adventure game. And so you actually just need to play it exactly how you would always play it. How do you deal with an object? You pick it up. So you literally pick up this concrete block and put it in your inventory, and you can just walk away. That's it. Of course. That's how you get out. But it gives you 10 minutes in order to do this.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And seriously, the number of times I've died trying to do that. I mean, these days, once you know, that is a puzzle you will always remember when you've struggled and struggled and struggled. I don't really remember a lot of the other puzzles, but my God, I remember that one.
And of course, because it's something that was so brilliantly done, so well done. that you're just like, it's gonna stick with your it's gonna stick in your memories for till the day you die.
Yeah.
Somebody mentions Monkey Island, you're gonna remember having to
The two bits
pick
I
up.
really mind, there's the bridge and the combat.
Exactly.
You know what? I don't really remember much about the rest of the puzzles. I remember the conversations with you and LeChuck and how that carries on. And, oh God, actually with the whole LeChuck stuff, when you look at Pirates of the Caribbean, it's a case of, pardon me, yeah, Monkey Island did it first.
Well, that's, again, another series that is so beloved that they re-released it with updated graphics and everything else. And it's still available.
I was not a fan of the updated graphics.
I didn't play it.
I've seen it, and you know what? I honestly, I'm not a fan of the updated graphics. I kind of like the old ones. They were stylized. See what they did with the updated graphics? They kind of made it more actually 3D rather than 2D. And it's kind of, as soon as you start putting it in 3D, there becomes expectations from it. Whereas,
yes, I understand completely, and I agree with you. We've only got a few minutes left here. Any other games we want to touch on? Oh, for anybody who's listening, Abandonia.com, ABANDONIA.com, they have a huge adventure game list. A lot of the ones that we've mentioned are on there. Go check it out, as well as GOG.com. They also have a lot of free ones. Beneath the Steel Sky, which is the gameplay in the background.
Yeah, I think they've got the Temptress or something, which is another point-and-click adventure game. There's actually quite a few games that you can pick up for free down there. I think like Ultima 4 and a couple.
Or some of the other ones, like a lot of the Monkey Island, I know, and the Dig. They actually have those in Steam in their under $10 or under $5 list. I know that today we're all about the flash and the shininess and everything else like that, but I tell you, you will be missing out. Your life will not be complete, and you won't even realize it if you don't play a point-and-click adventure game, at least one of them, and finish it. Take the time to finish it. I don't care if you have to cheat to find out the answers of what you need.
Well, I'll tell you what, Beneath the Steel Sky actually comes with a full walkthrough. It's absolutely
Awesome.
free, and it comes with a full walkthrough provided. So if you get stuck, you can just do it. Actually, the video in the background, this is my second attempt at it, because about 15 minutes into this video, I'd been stuck at that point for like about 45 minutes. I accidentally quit myself out and then went, oh, screw this. Restart the entire video, and I go through and I get way much further.
Hey, trust me, that's happened where I've gotten through like a certain point and I did something wrong, and I would just like, oh, forget it. Just start all over again because I hadn't saved or forgot to save before I got to that point. So
one of the drawbacks with the games of that period is you do really need to keep a strong eye on sometimes some of these games. Just read through if there are any big flaws in the game, because a lot of these games of the period, you do actually need to be aware of it, because you can just render your game completely and utterly incompletable otherwise.
Yep.
So it'll tell you, normally a lot of sites will tell you, do not do this, do not do this, do not do this, because if you do these things in these orders, that's it, the game just cannot be completed and you've got to go all over again, or revert back to a save just before that.
And at least they gave you that much of a warning, but sometimes, sometimes the warnings that they gave you were so ambiguous that you would have no idea what they were talking about until you actually got to that point and you were like, oh, don't poke the sleeping Snarlax in the eye, gotcha.
Yeah, but those weren't so bad where you just get the deaths. It's where it's just programmed, it's just the game can no longer be completed anymore, just simply because of how the game was set up. And those are just the hard ones. It's a case of, wow, thank you, in a really sarcastic voice.
Exactly.
Why did you do that?
I think
I think
genre...
we have got better.
Yes, we have gotten better. We've made some of the later adventure games were a little less ambiguous with what they needed to do. I know that you haven't played it, so I'm going to go ahead and suggest to you get Willie Beamish, The Adventures of Willie Beamish, and Freddie Farka's Frontier Pharmacy. Both of those by Sierra. They're both fantastic. Both free on Abandonia. Play through the Willie Beamish. It's a lot of fun. It's just very, again, as most Sierra games are, with the exception of a few, it's very lighthearted. There's actually a scene where you're eating pizza with your friends and somebody rips a fart, and you all do the thumb on the forehead, wiggling the fingers.
Yeah, there's just another one, Grim Fandango. It's a
yes.
Yeah, that's a LucasArts games. There's just so many great games. I think LucasArts and Sierra they dominated the adventure games. Quite frankly, there were some good adventure games elsewhere, but the classics came from those two basically.
Absolutely.
Can I get into the security building?
Well, let's see. Next time around, what are we going to talk about?
I don't know. I mean, we should probably do something game related. Because we've kind of done 2 lots on cartoons, so we got adventure games. So let's pick a genre, RPG games. There you go.
Role playing. Oh
Yeah.
God! Should we do a 2-hour show?
we might want to narrow that. We will discuss this off air.
Offline. Okay, so tentatively RPG games.
Yeah, I mean there will be a provision to that. It will probably be either a genre like dungeon crawls or particular years. We might just go with Japanese ones. You might just go with some Western ones.
Well, I think we should stick with, since we're RPG, or since we're retro gaming and we're always showing retro games, I think we should probably go with the whole 80s, 90s Western RPG.
You see, you could go with the roguelikes if we wanted to go really retro. Just start off with Rogue and go through all the roguelikes.
No.
Oh, it's my favourite period.
Love you like a brother. No, I'd like the series, but you and I both know that when it comes to RPGs in the late 80s and 90s, even people who didn't play D&D knew what the Gold Box series was.
Well, yes, that was a great series.
And I mean, I think that's probably what we should hunker down on. Is not necessarily those, because I don't know that we could fill an hour up with just them. It's like, yeah, they had a bunch of them. They were all in the golden boxes. They were all linked. There were some.
Yeah, but then of course you can go through the Ultima series, which is kind of a competing series, and they had some very different ways of doing it. Then of course you got Wizardry, Dungeon Master. Then of course you've got the roguelikes, which had spawned their own dungeon crawls. And there's a couple of really good modern games that came off that. And yeah, so I think we're pretty much getting to the end here, because I literally am just dying.
You just died.
And yep, that's pretty much it. It's kind of a big warning. Yeah, we're about out of tape.
Aw, how long ago did you... Oh, and you didn't save it.
No, I had tried saving, but I could never figure out the key. Look, there's me futilely. Yeah, oh, right, restart. Oh, crap, I'm at the beginning again.
That is horrible, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well.
Right. Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed this.
I am Sanrael.
Yeah.
That is Nerd of Gamers. And I guess we'll be doing this again next week.
Yep.
And you died in the same spot again.
Yeah. See you next time.
Take care, folks.